Hello, and welcome to Running the Table, the podcast where we run through everything on the table in the world of sports. And that's it. It's a wrap. March Madness is over. We've gone through the whole tournament, and it has finally come to an end
What a
with
crazy tournament it was, too.
the Kansas Jayhawks being crowned as your 2022 national champion. So for this episode, what we like to do is take a look back at the best of the bracket and just take a look at what a fun tournament it was, some of the best games, some of the best teams, some of the best stories, and it'll be a fun episode. This is one that we always enjoy making because it gives us time to reflect on what was. And it was a very fun tournament. So, Tim, Are you ready to go?
Let's run it, baby.
Yes, sir. But before we look at the tournament itself, let's look back at how we finished because we've been tracking our record throughout. And of course, Tim, you did really well for yourself. You went 42-21, which is good for 66%. 2 out of every 3 games.
2/3. I'll take it.
2/3. Yours truly, 45-18, which is good for
Very
71%, which is very solid indeed. Granted, we're going game by game, round by round.
It's a whole lot easier when we know everybody who's playing in those games and can analyze each individual matchup rather than predicting all of it from the beginning.
Yeah, but comparatively speaking to how we did last year, both of us improved significantly because last year I went 37-26. Tim, you went 31-32.
I wasn't even at 500.
Exactly. So that's an 8-win increase for me and an 11-win increase for you, which is
improving.
It's huge. It's a huge swing and it deserves a round of applause. And one more thing that we have to mention, we did have our ESPN bracket challenge. We have a winner for that. The winner is our very own Tim Giannini.
I'm gonna be honest, I'm a little surprised because usually my brackets do not do particularly well. But in this one happened to be my main bracket. To be clear, I did make 5 to put in our bracket challenge just for fun.
Because what the heck?
But my main one, my one that I made first, was my one that actually won the whole thing. Which was
you had Kansas as your national champion.
Yes, and came in second was Matt Trippenfeldis, good buddy of both of ours. And he
Shout
was
out
the
to our
only
boy
other
Tripp.
one. He was the only other one that also had Kansas as the national champ. He fell just short of me by 90 points. I think it was just because I got like one more game in the Elite Eight, basically, that really set me over the edge.
And in third place was my smart water bracket, where I literally just hit by BPI, and then it just
the BPI doesn't lie.
Third, no, my actual bracket was around like 15th or 16th place, like right in the middle, so I didn't do great.
A bunch of our brackets were all over the place, but it was fun to see. It was great to see all the people who put brackets in and how we all stacked up against each other. Hopefully we'll look to keep doing stuff like that in the future. Is a very fun thing to keep an eye on throughout the tournament.
It was absolutely a blast, just like this whole tournament was. So let's get into some of the games. We're going to go in order of the tournament. So the first game that we're going to take a look at is actually 2. It's the run that Notre Dame had in the first 4 and the first round, because the double overtime thriller, Notre Dame and Rutgers, 89-87, that led Notre Dame to fly cross country from Dayton to San Diego the very next day. And then they beat Alabama by 14 points. So I think that was about as impressive as a performance, as we saw in the first round, to go back-to-back days, no rest, and then you're flying, and then you're winning, and you're moving on to the second round. You got to tip your cap to the Irish.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, it was a crazy way to start off the tournament with the first 4 and whatnot. And not only for them to do that on like the back-to-back days, fly across the country, but they had a really hard grind it out. Obviously that double overtime win was insane with a lot of the shots that were being made and the pressure that was in both of those overtimes and the end of regulation. So really impressive performance by Notre Dame to not only make it out of that first 4, but then go and shock Alabama in the first round. So very impressive couple of games out of them.
100%. And more on the first round, we had some huge upsets with New Mexico State and UConn, where New Mexico State floored UConn by 7 points, but UConn came out the gate flat. They were expected to win. We both had UConn advancing in that round, and New Mexico State just flattened them. And another one that we both had was Richmond at Iowa, where Iowa was an absolute stunner. They were one of the hottest teams in the tournament coming in. They won the Big Ten tournament. They defeated Purdue. They had put on clinics all the Big Ten tournament, and then they come out flat and get beaten by an incredibly scrappy Richmond team. So those are the two big upsets that we had in the first round. Don't worry, we'll get to that. We'll get to that one later. I know what you're thinking. We'll get to it later. But
yeah, but specifically like with that New Mexico State UConn game, I mean, I really thought that UConn was their size was going to be a big problem for New Mexico State. New Mexico State did a great job really counteracting that and really just shutting UConn down in a lot of facets of the game. And then, of course, you got Richmond and Iowa. Like you said, Iowa throughout the Big Ten tournament was putting on offensive clinics on most teams, putting over 100 points in one of the rounds and shooting the ball very well, kind of across the floor through a lot of their guys. And they came into that game and they just really lost their steam and shots weren't falling. And Richmond was able to take advantage and win a scrappy, low scoring game. So that was a very, very big surprise upset, even though some people actually did really like Richmond in that first round game. But for me, it was a crazy upset based on how Iowa was playing going into that.
Yeah, I don't think either one of us, we didn't think Richmond was going to answer the question.
I wasn't really considering it.
Iowa.
I wasn't really even considering Richmond doing that because I didn't see anything specifically out of like the matchups, especially for Richmond, of how they were going to stop Iowa. But I also didn't see the fact that regardless of whatever shots Iowa was going to get, that they just weren't going to fall.
But you got to tip your cap to the Spiders. They made it happen. We had some very, very tight games. Illinois Chattanooga, where Illinois squeaked out a 1-point victory.
It really looked like they were gonna give it up.
Chattanooga was a popular upset pick, but it was a very gritty win by the Illini. Even though they didn't play well, they found a way to get the job done. Another game, UCLA and Akron, where last year's tournament darlings, they were almost sent home by the champions of the MAC. UCLA did not play well, won a 57-53. It was a real shootout, real barn burner in that one. But
yeah, not a pretty one, but they found just enough to sort of stifle the momentum that Akron had built throughout the game by keeping it close and getting just enough buckets toward the end of the game there to pull that one out.
Yeah, you had Creighton and San Diego State, which was an overtime matchup where Creighton won 72-69. They battled back and forth. 5 Creighton guys were actually in double figures that game, and the starting 5 had 71 of their 72 points.
That's insane.
So it was a good performance by Creighton.
1 point off the bench.
Yeah, no, seriously, just one lowly free throw.
Hey, if you've got your guys and your starting 5 that really do everything for you, and they've proven that they don't need a whole lot of breaks, and they're able to keep that high motor going throughout the whole game. You saw that work for North Carolina for most of the tournament. It can work. We've seen that it can work, and it did work, especially in that game for Creighton. And they're another team that is looking up on the up for going into the next season, given the talent they have.
And then Murray State, San Francisco, that was an overtime thriller where Murray State won 92-87. Now that was a real barn burner. They were going back and forth. Yeah, that was viewed as the best first round matchup between like 2 mid-majors.
I don't know of 2 mid-major teams that were that good that also played each other in the first round and both put up such solid performances. All in one game. So it was crazy to watch, and 2 very good teams. It was a shame that one of them had to fall in the first round.
Yeah, I mean, it was an incredibly unlucky draw for the both of them because they were both very skilled. They were both very good, and they put it on full display at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. And then another game that I want to talk about, a blowout, St. Mary's floors the Hoosiers. I mean, congratulations to the Hoosiers and Mike Woodson. They made their first NCAA tournament since 2016. So it was nice to see that familiar face back in the tournament after they beat Wyoming in the first 4. I mean, Tim,
they certainly fought their way to beat them.
You're happier that they got beat than I am because.
And that's the thing. I thought that given the momentum they had and the performance
you did pick them to win.
Yeah, that they put going into that game, the performance they put up against Wyoming and some of those games in the Big Ten tournament, I thought that they were going to keep the ball rolling, and they just came out on the wrong foot. Shots weren't falling. I didn't think they had the best game plan in which to attack St. Mary's, and St. Mary's beat them in every single aspect of that game, and it obviously showed on the stat sheet.
I mean, a 29-point thumping is no joke. Like it's the contrast with Notre Dame, where Notre Dame flew cross country after a first 4 victory, and they came out and played well and advanced. Indiana, it was the exact opposite.
Not there.
Not so much. But then the ultimate upset of the first round, Kentucky and St. Peter's, where
also talk about what a wild game to watch.
And what a wild game to go to and attend. That was a fun one, as it was right in my backyard, Gainbridge Fieldhouse in Indianapolis, Indiana. Kentucky they were heavy favorites. They were supposed to rip St. Peter's apart, but they massively disappointed. I mean, they let St. Peter stick around and they got stunned in overtime. Oscar Tshiebwe, it wasn't quite the 20-20 that you predicted.
Oscar Tshiebwe is going for 20-20.
It was close though.
It was 30-16.
But the problem was he wasn't supported by enough of the rest of the cast to come up with the win, and it was mostly on the defensive side, because as you saw, they had their way for the majority of the game offensively, but the problem was so did St. Peter's, and they shot the ball really well. They stuck around, and St. Peter's did enough at the end of the game there to sort of shake up what Kentucky wanted to do to try to close that game out, and it ended up rolling in the Peacocks' favor.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, 30-16 is obviously still a very incredible.
And he was the Naismith National Player of the Year for a reason.
And I would say deservingly so, because he was an incredibly impressive player game in and game out this year.
He was a game changer, an absolute force for the Wildcats. It's just a shame that they ran into an absolute brick wall. But now we'll go on to the best game of the second round, where Arizona and TCU. Tim, this was one of your favorite.
Oh, it was so close.
You almost predicted TCU, taking down.
They had it there too.
Taking down the 1 seed.
Mathurin was like, nah.
Yeah, TCU's grit allowed them to hang tight, but Benedict Mathurin's 3 with 12 seconds left, that has to be an all-timer. It's one of the best moments in this tournament, and what a great game, by far the best one of that round. But now we're going to jump to some teams that made it a bit further. We're just going to look at the runs that they had, starting with the Michigan Wolverines. Hail to the victors. They proved the doubters wrong, because there were a
lot of people that thought that they shouldn't even be there.
Exactly. They shouldn't have even been there. But they beat Colorado State by 8 points, and then they took down Tennessee by 8, who was my national champion and a lot of my brackets. Gee, thanks, Michigan. They made it to the Sweet 16 and they lost to Villanova. But for a team that wasn't supposed to make the tournament, they did pretty darn well for themselves.
Yeah, they looked really solid. They finally found a lot of that momentum. And I think the big part of their run in this tournament was they not only looked comfortable on the offensive side, that has been relatively consistent for them this season, but they really found their rhythm on the defensive end of the floor, and they shook up some teams, especially in that Tennessee game. You saw them make them uncomfortable and start sort of imposing their will on both ends of the floor. And that's what it takes to make runs in the national tournament. And that's what they were able to do. And credit to them. They obviously had a very talented roster. It was just putting the pieces together for them for the most of the season. But they were able to do that there.
Oh, Tim, that's a great segue to a not so great topic, where in the Sweet 16, we talked about your Boilermakers at length. We won't talk about them much here. We have a whole episode on that specific game, Purdue and St. Peter's. You can go watch it. We'll link that up somewhere in the I don't know when it's like around here, somewhere around there. You can go watch our episode on that game. But another team that went really far, made it all the way to the Elite Eight, Arkansas, the Must Bus. They rode
very talented team.
Yeah, that was a great turn. It was a great tournament run, although they didn't play that well in the first 2 rounds, where they had a scare from Vermont and New Mexico State with 4 and 5 point victories respectively. They woke up and they beat the mighty Gonzaga Bulldogs 74-68 in the Sweet 16. They just ran into Duke, where the road ended. But Eric Musselman had JD Note, Audis Tony, Stanley Amude, and Jalen Williams, and took their guys and went about as far as that Must Bus can take them. And next year, with 3 5-stars coming in, they're looking
like they could be very dangerous.
Yeah, this is not the ceiling for the Arkansas Razorbacks. So watch out.
You'll see them. You'll see them plenty again next year.
They'll be back. They will be back. But another team, the Miami Hurricanes, their Elite Eight.
Hurricanes, baby.
Hey, let's go Canes. We throw up the U here at Running the Table.
Hey, yeah.
You like them all tournament, and I'm a huge Hurricanes fan. For the first time in school history, they make the Elite Eight with a nail-biter win against USC in the first round, a thrashing of Auburn by 18 points in the second round, and a win against Iowa State in the third round by 14. They had it going in the first half against Kansas, where they took a 6-point lead into the half, and then the bottom just completely fell out.
Well, welcome to the second half of Kansas Jayhawks.
Right.
We'll talk more about that later too.
We absolutely will. But that team, as John Rothstein puts it, more guards than Shawshank Tim. I don't know if you've seen that movie because you're not a big movie guy. Oh God, you need to watch that movie. It's the greatest movie of all time.
I'll get around to it.
No, you won't. Anyway, Cam McGusty, Charlie Moore, Isaiah Wong, and Jordan Miller, they led the way. And then Big Sam Wardenberg, who can beat you from inside and outside. It was the perfect recipe for Coach L's Hurricanes to make their run to the Elite Eight.
That guard play for Miami was just incredible. And that was what brought it for that Hurricanes team, not only in the offensive end, but on the defensive end as well. That was sort of the key to their success game in and game out against a lot of these teams.
Mm-hmm. And then the run that captivated the heart of America. America's team.
Except for mine.
Except for yours.
Because I voted against them every single time.
But I voted for them every single time. And you can roll that clip. Screw it. I'm taking St. Peter's. Let's go, baby. Tim, the Peacocks. St. Peter's. I wrote it on the whiteboard. It's happening. St. Peter's. It's on the whiteboard. It's official. Book it. Let's go, St. Peter's. I'm doing it again.
Could the marker be the downfall?
I'm wearing the shirt. I wore it for a reason. I believe. Do not be a fan later of St. Peter's.
And I hate to break it to you, but you are not going to have the opportunity to make that same pick in the next round. And I'm going to stick with that confidence.
You said that last time. Let's go, St. Peter's. I am a peacock. You gotta let me fly. St. Peter's to the Elite Eight. Let's go.
It would be one hell of a story.
Oh, Tim.
I'm excited, man. Can you tell
a 15 seed has never made it to the Elite Eight.
I don't want to be on the wrong side of history on this one.
I put it on Twitter.
Side of history enough.
I tweeted, just watch. St. Peter's will be the first. Let's go, St. Peter's! You are a stubborn lad. But so am I. Because guess what? I am wearing the shirt.
Here we go again.
St. Peter's all the way. St. Peter's is moving on to the Final Four, and you can book that, good sir.
Tale of two stories on that one.
You're darn right. America's team does the improbable. They're the first 15 seed to make the Elite Eight. They shocked the world against Kentucky in overtime. They ran through the Racers in the second round with a 10-point victory. They shocked your Boilermakers in the Sweet 16, and they just ran out of gas in the Elite Eight against UNC. But gosh, what a run. What a cast of characters. The underdogs everywhere. That's why I've coined them America's team, because they encapsulate everything America's about. The come from nothing, the Jersey City underdogs, the scrappy guys where you gotta
yeah.
Well, it's Tim. Don't yeah me.
To be fair, they were an incredible team and they played absolutely great. The one thing that I think is particularly interesting to notice is just how different the college basketball landscape is going to look next year, especially this team, with all three of those star guards for St. Peter's entering the transfer portal to see what they can get elsewhere. You've got Doug Eddert, Daryl Banks, and Matthew Lee. All three of them are looking to explore options elsewhere. So you will see these guys appear on more high level teams next year, with potentially
they definitely earned
presence.
It with the way they played.
Absolutely.
In the tournament.
I'm very curious to see where they end up, because they're definitely going to get a lot more attention from high major teams.
Well, Tim, an aspect that you didn't look at is Shaheen Holloway, the engineer that made it all happen, has returned to his alma mater in Seton Hall. Very well deserved. Shaheen Holloway is an incredible coach. And the
very interesting to see what
the cast of coaches in the Big East now with Thad Matta coming to the Bulldogs, Thad Matta and Shaheen Holloway entering the picture for Seton Hall. The Big East is getting some serious upgrades, but it's a shame that St. Peter's, for as much as, for as amazing as it was in the tournament, it's earned the school
Seems
millions
like it's
of
certainly
dollars.
going to be a one-time.
They're going to be a comet. They're going to be a comet, and we enjoyed it while it lasted. Some of us here more than others. I certainly enjoyed it. Tim, you didn't, but
not quite as much. I can't lie.
You know, the dichotomy of man with the St. Peter's Peacocks, and thanks for the ride. We enjoyed it while it lasted. And then there were 4. The Villanova Wildcats, their fundamentals went all the way to the Final Four. Tim, you preached free throws for Villanova all tournament. They were
free throws and defense, and also just general efficiency. It's just they were one of the most efficient teams on both ends of the floor for most of the season, especially in the tournament. And even when their shots weren't quite falling, they fell back on those free throws to get them a lot of points whenever they could get them, and then defense to keep teams in some of the lower 50s or 60s to keep themselves in games. Obviously it ran out towards the end there, especially in the Final Four, but nothing short of a master class on how to run a team for Jay Wright and Villanova this year. They had a lot of talent, a lot of guys. It was a shame that that injury to Moore ended up kind of really shaking them up going into that Final Four. I would have liked to see what that game could have been if they were entirely healthy, but a great run nonetheless by them. And I was obviously very high on that team. So we'll see what Villanova looks like going into next year.
Yeah, you said it. I mean, Jay Wright is just the guy to do it. Their experience, they've been here before. That was their 3rd Final Four in the last 6 NCAA tournaments. They were national championships in 2016 and 2018. So these are guys, this is a program that definitely knows how to get there. Colin Gillespie, Caleb Daniels, Jermaine Samuels, and like you said, Justin Moore, when he was healthy, that really engineered the whole thing. And another team that made it to the Final Four, Coach K's final ride. You have to respect it with the Duke Blue Devils.
Absolutely.
And with what a historic career that Coach K has had, over 1,200 wins, over 100 NCAA tournament wins, 36 NCAA tournament appearances, 15 ACC championships, 13 appearances in the Final Four, and 5 national championships. Coach K.
You won't hear a stat line like that for a coach very much ever.
It'll be a long
It'll be hard pressed to see somebody who can put up those type of numbers.
Coaches like that come once in a blue moon, and Duke went as far as they took their coach. And, you know, now with guys like Paolo Banchero, AJ Griffin, Wendell Moore, certainly going to be 1st-round picks in the draft. Coach K riding off into the sunset. There's no doubt Duke will be back because they're one of the most historic programs in college basketball.
Just look a little different.
Just going to be with a very different look that we haven't seen since 1979, which, gosh, that's a long time ago. It's a long time ago.
I just think it's very nice, especially after that game ended, to see all of the people come out of the woodwork, past and present, to show not only the effect that Coach Krzyzewski had on that organization and that program, but on the kind of scope of college basketball as a whole, and on all of those individual players, the course of their lives, because he affected a lot of guys over those many, many years. And a lot of people showed their support. And I think it's just very, very nice to see that it affected so much more than just the game of basketball.
Coach K, hats off to a fantastic coaching career. But after that, you got the 2 competitors in the national championship game, starting first with the North Carolina Tar Heels. They entered the tournament as an 8 seed that was struggling in the middle of their season. They turned it around in a major way, and they went right to the national championship. Hubert Davis, his first year as North Carolina head coach, succeeds Roy Williams, takes him to the doorstep of a national championship with wins over Baylor in overtime, UCLA with that Final Four team still intact, the Miracle St. Peter's Peacocks, and vanquishing Duke. So a very, very impressive run.
Very impressive.
Ran the gauntlet. You got guys like Caleb Love, RJ Davis, Armando Bacot, and Brady Manick. And even when the starters weren't producing, you had guys like Puff Johnson stepping up in big situations.
Johnson, that was to me one of my favorite stories out of that national championship game, because you never know with a team like that, when you run a lineup like that, when that can potentially come bite you in bite you in the butt there, but he came off the bench. He stepped up. He hit shots. He got rebounds. He took a charge. And overall, it was a very fun.
Puked on the
fun little story
floor
to see.
because he was working so darn hard.
He got hit. They said he took a shot to the stomach, and that's what really caused that one there. But it was very fun to see. I love the lineup that North Carolina had. A lot of key guys that just brought their specific roles to that team, and that's what took them that far. And we knew the team that came out of that East region was going to have to go through one hell of the gauntlet tournament.
They had to go through the gauntlet.
But North Carolina had arguably the hardest of them all in terms of the way they had to pass. Other than like that first round matchup, they were facing top tier teams pretty much every round.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, and you have to include St. Peter's in there because of the fact that they beat all the other
St. Peter's was improbable, but they took down 2 and 3. Not Baylor. North Carolina took down the rest, including Baylor. They got 1 and 4, and then they got Duke, and then they got St. Peter's. Not in that order, but just, I wish it was in that order.
Imagine impressive overall.
Imagine if St. Peter's had made the Final Four.
St. Peter's is moving on to the Final Four.
But oh well, great story either way. But let's talk about that national championship game. What a ball game. We both had it right. We said Kansas was going to be the national champion. But
boy, did that look shaky there for a while.
Yeah, but going into the first half, it didn't quite look like it. With about 2 minutes to go in the first half, UNC held a 16-point lead, 38-22.
15 at half.
Which was 15 at half. And then you snap your fingers 5 minutes later, UNC's lead is down to 6. And then you go 2 more minutes later and UNC's lead is just 1. Kansas second half
Welcome
basketball.
To the Kansas Jayhawks and coming into the second half. It's just, there was something you saw almost an identical, not only like stat line overall in terms of like momentum switch and the way the game sort of flowed, but even the numbers specifically almost matched exactly what Kansas did to Miami, except for the fact that they were down more. But in the first half, they have 25 points and score 47 in the second half. Against Miami, it was 29 in the first half and 47 in the second half. So almost 50 points in the second half in both of those games just showed how they could completely flip the script. Not only turn it on the offensive end, but start making shots, but they turned it on the defensive end and started getting those stops, which allowed them to get more and more buckets and faster pace while getting out in the transition game, which is one of the things that Kansas does best. And that is how they turned that game around once again.
Mm-hmm. And with some of the guys that I was watching the game with, one of who was rooting for Kansas very, very hard. Shout out my boy Jackson. We asked him at the half when Kansas was down 15. Hey, buddy, you worried? Like, how Carolina's looking really good. And he goes, they'll come back. They'll score 70 points. And lo and behold, the lead
exactly what they did
evaporated into thin air. And that is exactly what they did. A hell of a call. He kept the faith the whole way. And Kansas was very well deserving of that national championship. Another aspect of that game that I want to talk about is the last 2 minutes and that final sequence. The last 2 minutes, specifically the injury of Armando Bacot, how huge that was for the Tar Heels. He twisted or sprained his ankle down low, and it forced him out for the rest of the game. And he wasn't on the floor in those final 2 minutes, which was huge for the Tar Heels, not having him on the court.
Even in that possession alone, he gets the ball, starts driving into the lane, down 1. If he's able to keep his footing, keep a solid base, get a decent shot up, it's possible that they take the lead there. Instead, he hurts himself. They turn the ball over. He's out for the rest of the game, and Kansas gets the ball with the ability to try to put themselves up even more, which they were able to do. So it's just like the entire, just almost any chance. And of course, lo and behold, North Carolina still ended up with another chance because of a late turnover stepping out of bounds,
which was another thing that I wanted to talk about, that last second.
But North Carolina still got another chance. But if that didn't happen, you could have seen such a different ending to that game. And it's just a shame because he played so hard to come off of that injury last game. And they said he was looking a little iffy coming into warmups. He definitely wasn't 100%. And he came out into the game, adrenaline started hitting, and he looked very solid once again. But but it just wasn't enough there with that ankle. It's really tough with ankle injuries, but a really tough player. Loved what I saw out of him. And I just love his mentality and what he brought not only to that team, but just the game itself.
Mm-hmm. And that last second sequence, which I want to talk more about, is an absolute nail biter. Caleb Love takes it up the court, doesn't even run a set play, and with about 15 seconds to go, attempts the game tying three.
We talked about some shot selection for Caleb Love.
And UNC had 2 timeouts left at the time, and Caleb Love, he had 13 points in the game, but he was 5 for 24.
He didn't shoot very well, and I don't think that was
24
not the shot
field
to
goals
take.
attempted in the game. He was 1 for 8 from 3.
He tried to play hero.
And I mean, fortunately for the Tar Heels, DeJuan Harris stepped out of bounds and gave UNC the ball back with about 4 seconds left. And that last second inbound play that they tried to run, where they were running a potential double screen for Brady Manick to try to get him an open 3, which Brady Manick in open 3s that he can connect on. He can connect. He had knocked down some open 3s earlier in the game in the first half. And
I also like him as a contested shooter more than a lot of the guys in North Carolina. He can make some tough shots, and that's the guy where I would have liked to go. But you saw, if you're watching that last play, he gets tripped up running that sideline there, and it's hard to tell what sort of play they could have gotten rather than the sort of throw up a prayer shot that they got from Love right at the end there.
They tried running a set play. It was blown up, so you had to kind of improvise, and
they didn't get a terrible shot from it, but of course contested 3, and you just kind of ran into it. Not your most high percentage 3 off of, especially not what you wanted out of a set play there. But once again, the one thing for me, obviously that final 2 minutes was insane, but especially for the second half for Kansas, there's 2 players that I really would like to highlight. And that's the play of Remy Martin and Christian Brown. Remy Martin did not shoot the ball well in the first half. He had a couple of iffy shots. He was showing hesitation. He would pump fake a little bit and then shoot. It was very short. But in the second half, he remembered that he was a scorer and he turned it on. He shot 100% from the field in the second half. I believe made 3 threes in the second half, like 14 points or something like that.
Yeah, 14 points on 5 of 9 shooting. Remy Martin really turned it on and remember who he was. And Christian Brown, when Ochai Agbaji, he didn't have a bad game by any means, but Agbaji struggled at points.
Not what we're used to seeing about Agbaji, especially in these last couple of games.
Christian Brown really picked up the slack and carried that team on his back. I think he's what really started the momentum shift in that second half. He got like 6 quick points within the first couple of minutes. You saw him, they were using him driving from the outside, driving in, getting contact, going through. They decided to switch it up, put McCormack out on the free throw line and actually get Brown down in the mismatch on the post and actually try to take him in the post there because he had more size, and he was just a huge contributor into switching that momentum in that second half there. Ended up with 12 points total. And 12 rebounds, by the way.
Yes, a double-double out of a guy. He's relatively tall, but he's not usually a key rebounder for them.
Mm-hmm. The key rebounder is David McCormack, where McCormack also had a double-double with 15 and 10. Yeah. But Christian Brown really spearheaded that comeback in the second half.
Those 2 guys were just huge playmakers down the stretch for them and making key shots. You had talking about the 3-point shooting from Remy Martin. He had 2 contested 3s from the corner there mid to late in the second half that were huge for keeping Kansas on top there. So you just had a lot of those key players. You knew Kansas had the talent, but their talent stepped up when they needed it the most.
Mm-hmm. And that's a perfect segue into talking about the national champions, the Kansas Jayhawks, the way they went about themselves from just late in the year onward. Bill Self, they led an experienced group of guys to a national title. And what they were saying was, this was the 2020 team that didn't get the chance to because of COVID, because they were the number 1 overall seed coming in. And a lot of these guys that were on the Kansas national championship team this year were on the 2020 team. So this was kind of the recognition of that lost year.
A bit of a revenge tour, just not against anything.
A little bit of redemption,
other than the redemption. Yes, because of the fact that they weren't given that opportunity, they looked forward to seizing this one that much more. And I think some of that extra drive and motivation really pushed them through this tournament. And you saw they at every turn, they stepped it up, whether it was their main guys or guys coming out of nowhere. But yeah, what a fantastic team, great talent. And of course, once again, we've talked about the importance of great coaching, and Bill Self really did a great job in orchestrating like the comebacks, changing up strategy, anything that he feasibly could to try to get these guys sort of jump started, and then just let them do the rest.
A well-deserved national championship. That's their first since 2008, since that Mario Chalmers team.
Yeah.
But, you know, when I look at this Kansas team, they're characterized by those second half performances that you talked about, especially
a staple for them. Yeah.
The second round onward, they scored 40 plus points in every second half. 40 against Creighton, 40 against Providence, 47 against Miami, 41 against Villanova, and 47 against North Carolina to erase the largest
deficit offense
in NCAA tournament history. A well-deserved national champion, and the Kansas Jayhawks crowned crown him.
I will say, I think one of the big things, and we saw this as sort of an identity for Kansas, a big reason that they're able to have those really big spurts and really big halves of basketball when they get going, is that we talked about how fast they are. They're such a speedy team to get out in transition and get those quick buckets rather than taking a long time on each individual possession. The way they're able to get out in transition when they get those stops really gets them a lot more possessions and gets them a lot more quality shots to be able to have those really big scoring halves.
Yeah. Just the second half adjustments and the speed that they play with, and just the overall,
hard to handle for a lot of teams.
It's very hard to handle for a lot of teams, but that'll about
what a run.
What a run.
What a month. What a month.
What a tournament.
Like a month and a half for us. What
a tournament for the NCAA, for college basketball, and what a month for us. You said it yourself. It's been amazing to have all of you guys along with us. We see each and every one of you who likes and comments our videos, who've subscribed. It means the world to us, and it's what makes it all worth it. So from the bottom of our hearts, we thank you. We really do. We're looking forward to more sports content, more running the table content in the future. We're going to have a lot of fun stuff planned as March turns into April. Baseball season is right around the corner, so we'll have a lot of the rivalry
NFL free agency keeps moving on.
But the NFL
draft, you'll see a lot more of us, yes, and the draft coming around the corner. You'll see a lot of us coming up here.
Yeah, oh yes, and we can't wait to bring it all to you. So if you want to watch our other stuff, go watch the entire tournament, the ride that we went through, see how we picked throughout the tournament. We have those videos there. Baseball, football, we've been keeping up with that pretty consistently. So you can watch all that on YouTube, and you can find us on Spotify, Google Podcasts, and any other podcast platforms where we can be found. But until next time, we out.